The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Today FM.
It all happens here.
We're going to start with Senator Rebecca Moynihan of the Labour Party, but first, Killian Wood, senior reporter with the Business Post, who had some extraordinary property-related stories in the newspaper yesterday. And can you start, please, by telling us about the apartments in Finglas in Dublin 11, controlled by NAMA, which have never been used since they were completed a decade ago?
Yeah, Matt. I suppose these are a selection of a larger housing development there on the main road, the road out towards the M50 near Finglas on the way to Derry, where there's a large 479 apartment block there that NAMA own a lot of properties in, 54 in particular. Now, if you read the sales literature very closely, it says some of these are already used and occupied at the moment. They're at kind of below market rent, about $1,200 a month, which would be quite good for Dublin areas, but even in Finglas area. But then there's 28 that are actually vacant at the moment. And specifically, if you read the sales literature, it says 26 of those can be put in the market at full market rent. And the only way that could be done is if they were never let before. And look, NAMA confirmed it. These apartments have been never let before. They were completed after the recession when NAMA took them over. So they came on board, took on the distressed assets, got them completed. And for one reason or another, they've not been completed. A spokesperson for NAMA told me last week that it's not necessarily on them to get them let. It's actually who the receivers and the property agents looking after it are responsible. But, these are, there's no fudging it. These are 26 apartments owned by the state that are being sold now off in a bulk portfolio that could have been occupied today or occupied over the last 10 years.
That's bad enough, but also you say it's sold off as a block. So this is the state going to sell to investors rather than selling the units individually for those who are looking to buy.
Well, this is the thing, and this is where we get back to, it's back and forth a lot at the Public Accounts Committee where NAMA come in and say what their remit is. NAMA seems to have interpreted their remit to be to make the best price to the taxpayer. Now that's open for debate because they are meant to contribute some sort of social good too, a social and economic good. Selling off apartments in a block like this to a fund, and these apartments, like, we don't know exactly who the actual only bidder is for these apartments, but it'll most likely go to a fund at the price that they're advertising at. AHBs or social housing bodies, they can't compete with the price that's been put on these properties at the moment. Yet they're going to be sold as a block like this, and NAMA could have sold them to Dublin City Council. They could have leased them to them. They could sell them affordably on an individual basis if they wanted, really. But they are going to be sold off as a block instead.
Senator Rebecca Moynihan of the Labour Party, this also gives rise to the question, if this has happened in Finglas, is this a one-off, or could there be loads of other properties around the country that NAMA has been hoarding, which it could have rented or which it could sell to individuals?
Exactly, and the Dublin Inquirer a couple of years ago also reported about 58 social homes in Prospect Hill, a whole block that was being let empty, and that was owned by Dublin City Council. And Killian and Sarah Taft have done some excellent reporting around private investors who've also left homes empty, like Clancy Quay and Capitol Dock. So I think this underlines the need to have a vacant homes tax. It is simply unacceptable that if something has been built for residential or could be used for residential, that it's allowed to lay empty without anybody intervening. And the fact that this happened by an arm of the state at a time where children were going and living in hotels just down the road from that in Ballymun is an absolute disgrace. I think it really underlines the need for a vacant homes tax. And I had expected and hoped to see something like that coming in the budget, but the Minister for Finance seems to be blocking this and absolutely bottling it on a vacant homes tax. Now, there are obviously going to be some exceptions to that. For example, housing that's going through probate after somebody dies or fair deal. There are going to be exceptions. But where you have a situation where NAMA or large institutional investors or indeed local authorities own homes that people could be living in, it is not acceptable that they are left empty for that amount of time.
OK, now something else, Killian Woods, that you wrote about in the Business Post yesterday. It's long been a bugbear of mine, the Sentinel in Sandyford, which is one of the most ugly eyesores imaginable amongst all the modern buildings near the Beacon Hospital. You have this part-built shell of a tower, which has been there for about a decade at this stage, unfinished. And you did a very interesting piece about the owners of that and other properties, particularly another complete eyesore, the former Corrib Great Southern Hotel in Galway, which has been lying derelict for how long now in this stage?
Yeah, the Corrib Great Southern, again, the best part of a decade, it was taken over by, again, we're not singling them out to be like as being doing anything wrong. They are just acting in an environment, the Comer brothers of the Comer Group are acting in an environment where this is allowed to happen. So no one's accusing them of doing anything wrong or sitting on properties they shouldn't have done. But during the recession, the Comer Group, it's owned by Luke and Brian Comer, two of the most biggest property developers in Ireland now, snapped up hundreds of millions worth of euro of property that was essentially going on the cheap because of the recession we went through. One of those properties was the former Corrib Great Southern Hotel, again, well known to a lot of people in Galway, so sitting there idle for years on end, lots of arson attacks, lots of fires on the site, the windows smashed in. It is the definition of a derelict building. Galway City Council have called it a derelict building. And it's just sat there since 2013 when they acquired it for 3.5 million. By 2017, it was up to worth 5 million. This is the Coen brothers actually valuing it themselves. This is not any kind of, this is their own analysis valuing it at 5 million. And then in the last 3 years alone, it's gone up to 7 million. So it's not something that's happened like in the early part of the recession where property prices rose. It's rising rapidly in price, even in recent years. The Sentinel, I think it's a perfect relic of the Celtic Tiger. Like we maybe in some years there'll be an argument to keep it, to remind ourselves of what actually happened back then. At the moment, they're looking to redevelop it, but they bought the Sentinel building in Sandyford, right there beside near the Aldi and the Beacon Hospital. They bought it for 850,000, a real cut price in 2011. It's now worth 4.5 million. And that's nearly double in price from 3 years ago.
Okay, Rebecca Moynihan, these things are an eyesore, but here's a reward for dereliction.
Absolutely. And I think it underlines the need to have a stick approach when it comes to allowing people to allow things to sit derelict and they increase in value. Again, like they're not once off, and Killian has done some excellent work in this. There's a corner of a site in Dawson's Barn, which is in the inner city, disposed of by the city council. The person got planning permission. He has allowed it sit there and increase in value over the last 7 years, and it's very difficult to get it back. Like, this is the policy environment that we're operating in, where people were able to buy hugely discounted properties from the state, are watching it increase in value and not doing anything for it. So there's two ways to tackle that. One is provide incentives, which absolutely I understand that some people might be able to afford it, provide incentives, but we also need to provide the sticks to get people to move both housing and also land that's available for housing to be built. And what we saw in the budget last week, no vacant homes tax and a decrease in the vacant sites tax, vacant sites levy, and they've just dressed it up under a different name.
To finish with you, Killian Woods, another story that you have, which I also thought was fascinating. If we believe that the state is going to be responsible for all of the new houses that we need, it seems that the state is falling down in facilitating the construction that is underway at present. You had a story about a large housing development in County Meath been delayed for 5 months. And I've heard stories recently about Irish water and sewage availability causing a problem. You have an electricity connection issue with this one.
Yeah, so this is a phase of 250 homes, one phase of part of 250 home development called Bryanstown Wood out near Drogheda and the Meath side of Drogheda. And again, yeah, it's fairly simple. They've been property owners have been trying to get into their homes for the last few months. They were told in March there'd be a 6-month lead in time. Again, this is no fault of the developer, no fault of the property agents. It seems like from their side, an ESB issue where the ESB just cannot get on site to do the works for maybe their own backlog that they need to get through. But there is crucial connection work that needs to be done before those homes are completed, and they just can't get it done, and it doesn't seem like there's any proper timeline in place. Like, again, the timeline put in the piece is really tenuous. They kind of said we're aiming for February, March of next year, but there's no guarantee that that'll actually take place. They're kind of at the whim of ESB to get the electricity connection done. As you said there, Irish water as well connections. These are the things that developers would often bring up when maybe they've been unfairly pinged as saying you're not building the homes. They say, well, look, there's connection issues, there's Irish water issues, and this is a perfect example of one of those two where it is actually they've built the homes, they're nearly ready to go, and they just can't get over the line that final little bit. And there are social housing developments it's actually been delayed for that exact reason.
Just to let you know, we've had about 5 messages in the last few moments from different numbers in Galway saying the demolition work started today in the Great Southern Hotel. As one says, about 5 years too late, the Coram Great Southern, but I don't know whether that's down to what you wrote yesterday or whether it had been planned for today anyway. But according to all of these listeners, the much needed work getting rid of that eyesore has begun. Thank you very much, Killian Woods from the Business Post and Senator Rebecca Moynihan of the Labour Party.
The Last Word with Matt Cooper.
Weekdays from 4:30. Today FM.